Welcome back to Episode 2 of the Social Security and Housing Finance Corporation saga. In the last episode, I mentioned how I was called in to meet with the HR and the MD. When I met with him, I was told that while they technically had vacancies, they were only temporary. The HR team explained that many of the finance team members were on maternity and annual leave, so they needed immediate help. However, the challenge was that once those staff members returned, they weren't sure where they could place me. During my meeting with the MD, he acknowledged my experience working at Xenobank and the fact that I was pursuing finance courses. He said I was a great fit for the role. He offered me a position with a 6-month probationary period, after which I could be moved into the finance pool as an account assistant if things worked out. Honestly, even if the position had only lasted 6 months, I would have accepted. My main focus at the time was to pay my school fees, and this job would help me do just that. Finance courses are expensive, and this was the opportunity I needed. I started working at Social Security, but from the moment I arrived, I was bombarded with personal questions. People wanted to know if I was connected to the MD, where I had worked before, and even asked for my social media handles. They asked if I was married, and seemed more interested in my personal life than my qualifications. It was a red flag for me because the focus wasn't on my work, but on who I was as a person. Another thing that seemed to surprise people was that I spoke English most of the time instead of the local languages. As a Mandinka, my Wolof is really poor, so I preferred to communicate in English, especially in a professional setting. But some people saw this as me trying to show off or appear overly educated, which wasn't the case at all. The first real problem came when several men at the office, most of them married, started approaching me for romantic relationships. This made me extremely uncomfortable. I decided to bring up some of the issues I was facing with our MD, which was Graham at the time. He was more than just a boss to me. He became a mentor. I've always admired people who are well-educated and knowledgeable, and I was curious about his journey to leadership. One day, I asked him if he ever imagined he would become the MD, and he shared his story with me. I was amazed and inspired by his journey. He mentioned that I might have been the first employee to ask him about how he rose through the ranks. His advice to me was to stay on my path, even though he jokingly called me stubborn. He reassured me that if I ever needed guidance, his office was always open. Stay tuned for Episode 3, where the story continues. Thanks for listening.